Imagine every living thing as a complex instruction manual. This manual is made of DNA. It tells a tiny seed how to grow into a giant sunflower. Scientists have learned to read this language. They can make tiny changes to it. So, what is a GMO? The letters GMO stand for genetically modified organism. An organism is any living thing. Modified means changed. Genetically means the change happened in its DNA. So, a GMO is a living thing whose genetic instruction manual has been altered by humans. This isn't just random change, it's a deliberate tweak, often to introduce a new helpful trait. Think of it like adding a new sentence to that instruction manual. This process is called genetic engineering. Scientists can take a specific gene from one organism and place it into another, or they can alter an existing gene within an organism. This is done with remarkable precision. The goal is often to solve a problem, like helping a plant fight off insects or making food more nutritious. For thousands of years, humans have been changing organisms. We did it through selective breeding. Genetic engineering is much faster. It allows us to make changes that might be impossible through traditional breeding alone. You might hear different words used to describe these modified organisms. Sometimes you'll see GMO, other times you might encounter genetically engineered. In the United States, a newer term you will see on food labels is bioengineered. These terms mostly point to the same concept: life, intentionally altered at the genetic level. Understanding these terms helps us navigate the information we receive about our food. The term bioengineered became prominent in the U.S. due to the National Bioengineered Food Disclosure Standard. This law requires food manufacturers to disclose the presence of bioengineered ingredients. The U.S. Department of Agriculture chose this specific term. They defined bioengineered food as food that contains detectable genetic material modified through certain lab techniques. It cannot be created through conventional breeding or found in nature. This specific definition helps create a uniform standard for labeling, aiming for clarity for consumers across the nation. Genetically modified organism, or GMO, is a very broad term. Genetic engineering describes the actual scientific process. Transgenic often refers to an organism that contains DNA from a different species. The choice of words can also be influenced by public perception. So, when you see bioengineered on a food label, it's a specific regulatory term. It means the food meets the U.S. government's definition for disclosure. When we talk about GMOs, what specific crops are we actually discussing? In the United States, several major crops have widely adopted genetically engineered varieties. Think of vast fields of corn stretching to the horizon. A huge percentage of this corn is genetically modified. The same is true for soybeans, another cornerstone of American agriculture. Beyond corn and soybeans, other common GMO crops include cotton. Canola, used to make cooking oil, is another major player. Sugar beets, a primary source of our table sugar, are also predominantly GMO. Then there's alfalfa, often used as animal feed for dairy cows and other livestock. Some GMOs end up more directly on our plates as whole foods. For example, some varieties of papaya, particularly those grown in Hawaii, are genetically engineered. Certain types of squash and potatoes have also been modified. More recently, apples that resist browning after being sliced have become available. For major commodities like corn, soybeans, and cotton in the U.S., over 90% of the acreage planted is with genetically engineered varieties. Humans have been shaping the genetics of their food for an incredibly long time. For about 10,000 years, since the dawn of agriculture, we've been cosmic gardeners. Our ancestors selected the best plants, the ones that tasted better, grew bigger, or survived harsh conditions. This is called selective breeding. It's a slow, patient form of genetic modification, guided by human hands and observation over countless generations. Modern genetic engineering is simply a new chapter in this very old story of human innovation in agriculture. So why do we continue to modify crops, now with advanced genetic tools? The reasons are diverse. A primary driver is protection against pests. Some GMO crops produce their own natural insecticide, often a protein called Bt. Another major reason is herbicide tolerance. This allows farmers to control weeds more effectively without harming their main crop. Other motivations include enhancing nutritional value. Golden rice, for example, was engineered to produce beta-carotene, a precursor to vitamin A. Scientists are also working on crops that are more resistant to diseases, or that can tolerate drought or salty soils. The goal is a more resilient and productive agriculture, a food system that can nourish humanity sustainably. Are genetically modified foods safe to eat? This is a natural and important question. The overwhelming scientific consensus, from respected organizations all around the world, is that GMOs currently available on the market are safe to eat. Groups like the World Health Organization, the American Medical Association, and the National Academy of Sciences have reviewed extensive research. Their conclusions are clear: consuming foods with ingredients from GMO crops does not pose a greater risk to human health than consuming their non-GMO counterparts. This conclusion is based on decades of research and scrutiny. Hundreds of studies have been conducted. Furthermore, GMO crops have been part of the food supply in many countries for over 25 years. Billions of people have consumed them. During this time, there has been no credible, verified evidence linking the consumption of approved GMOs to any new allergies or negative health effects in humans. The genes introduced are well understood, and the proteins they produce are tested for toxicity and allergenicity before any GMO crop is approved for human consumption. Consider the example of Bt crops, like Bt corn or Bt cotton. These plants produce a protein from the bacterium. This protein is toxic to certain insect larvae, like the corn borer. However, it is highly specific and harmless to humans. Beyond our health, what is the impact of GMOs on our planet? This is another crucial area of discussion. The environmental effects of genetically modified crops are complex, with both potential benefits and concerns that require careful management. One of the most significant impacts relates to pesticide use. Some GMOs are engineered to resist pests, often called Bt crops. By producing their own insect protection, these crops can lead to a reduction in the spraying of broad-spectrum chemical insecticides. This reduction in insecticide spraying can be a significant environmental benefit. Fewer insecticide applications mean less exposure for farmers and wildlife. It can also help preserve beneficial insect populations like ladybugs or lacewings. However, the story with herbicides is a bit different. Many major GMO crops are engineered to be tolerant to herbicides, particularly glyphosate. This has led to widespread use of glyphosate-based herbicides. While this can simplify weed control and enable practices like no-till farming, there are concerns about the development of herbicide-resistant weeds. No-till farming, facilitated by herbicide-tolerant crops, can reduce soil erosion and improve soil structure. Scientists are also working on GMOs with other environmental benefits like drought tolerance and improved nutrient uptake. The story of GMOs is not confined to one country or one continent. It's a global narrative, unfolding differently across the diverse cultures and ecosystems of our world. The United States is a major producer and consumer of GMO crops, as we've seen. But other nations also play significant roles. Brazil and Argentina, for example, are huge growers of GMO soybeans and corn. Canada cultivates GMO canola and other crops. India has widely adopted Bt cotton, which has had a substantial impact on its cotton industry by helping farmers combat devastating bollworm pests. However, the acceptance and regulation of GMOs vary dramatically around the world. The European Union, for instance, has much stricter regulations. They have a rigorous approval process and mandatory labeling for foods containing GMOs. As a result, fewer GMO crops are grown in Europe, and consumer attitudes are often more skeptical compared to North or South America. This highlights how cultural values, historical context, and public discourse can shape the adoption of new technologies. The science of genetic modification is not standing still. It's a constantly evolving field, like the universe itself, always expanding into new territories. Beyond the traditional methods of creating GMOs, newer techniques have emerged. Perhaps the most talked about is CRISPR-Cas9. This is a gene editing tool. Think of it not just as adding a new sentence to the DNA instruction manual, but as having a precise molecular search and replace function for the existing text. CRISPR and similar gene editing tools offer incredible precision. They can be used to make very small, specific changes to an organism's own DNA. Sometimes this means deleting a small piece of DNA, or altering a single letter in the genetic code. In many cases, these changes are indistinguishable from mutations that could occur naturally or through older breeding methods. The potential applications of gene editing in food and agriculture are vast. Scientists are using it to develop crops that are more resistant to diseases, or that can tolerate drought or salty soils. In livestock, gene editing could be used to confer resistance to diseases that can decimate herds, improving animal welfare and food security. These new gene editing technologies also raise ethical questions and societal discussions. So, we've journeyed through the world of GMOs. We've seen they are organisms whose genetic material has been intentionally altered using scientific tools. This is often done to give them beneficial traits like pest resistance or better nutrition. We've learned that terms like bioengineered are used for labeling, helping us understand what's in our food. These technologies are part of a long human tradition of shaping the organisms around us, a tradition that stretches back to the very dawn of agriculture. We've explored the common GMO crops that form a large part of our food system, from corn and soybeans to papayas and apples. And critically, we've addressed the question of safety. The overwhelming scientific consensus built on decades of research and consumption is that currently approved GMOs are safe to eat. They undergo rigorous testing before they ever reach your plate. The environmental impact is a nuanced picture. While Bt crops can reduce insecticide use, herbicide-tolerant crops have led to different patterns of herbicide use, alongside benefits like no-till farming. The quest continues for GMOs that offer even greater environmental advantages like drought tolerance or improved nutrient uptake. Globally, the adoption and perception of GMOs vary, but their potential to address challenges from crop diseases to nutrient deficiencies is recognized by many. Ultimately, understanding GMOs is about understanding science.